Hello again, class. Professor Stewart here with a short lecture on Flannery O'Connor and A Good Man is Hard to Find. Um, uh, I guess I should have warned you about this story. It's a little bleak, but most of these stories are for some reason. However, this is classic Flannery O'Connor, though. Okay, I'll get to my notes here. O'Connor was born in Georgia and spent pretty much her entire life in the South. She died young. She was born in 25 and died in 64. Never married. Most of her knowledge was gained through. She was very highly educated. Got a master's degree, which was unusual at the time. So she was kind of a strange fish there. One thing you got to know about O'Connor, a couple things, okay, that are always relevant when you're reading her, okay? One, you have to understand that she is was very, very, very Catholic, like Catholic, okay? Which is unusual in the South, okay? Because the South is typically, Protestant, Baptist, Methodist, that sort of thing. So unless you're in New Orleans, places like that, you're not really going to find a lot of Catholics. So it's unusual that she was Catholic, which made her sort of an outsider. So most of her stories have some of the same themes. Think about what religion, like, good versus evil, and that sort of stuff. Redemption, damnation, those kinds of things are all part of her oeuvre, as it were. But that's not to say that her stories are about religion. Okay, they almost always aren't. Her characters, it's an underlying theme of what she writes. Okay, so you want to be aware of that. Okay. Two, her genre is pretty much, she's considered an exemplar of what's called the Southern Gothic genre of literature, which includes her and William Faulkner, maybe Walker Percy out of New Orleans. And the thing about Southern Gothic literature is it's about the grotesque. Grotesque does not mean disgusting. We think that it means that, but grotesque means exaggerated, sort of distortedly exaggerated. And so these people that she writes about seem over the top, but having spent most of my life in the South, I should say most of my life, it's been a long time since I've spent a lot of time up in the South, but these people are not that far off base what you'd find just driving down the road. Okay, so some of these people, there's a lot of eccentrics in the South, and like I said, this isn't the South we're living in down here. This is South Florida, but it's not the South. We're talking about anywhere between Orlando and, say, I don't know, Virginia, and then Georgia to Texas. Okay, that's the South. All right. So the South is full of these kinds of characters that she writes about. And like I said, she had lupus and died very young and single, but not before getting an MFA. But let's talk about her story, okay? Oh, she died of lupus, by the way. Lupus, it's an autoimmune disease. So, and A Good Man is Hard to Find, okay? We have a pretty straightforward story for the most part, okay? We have a family going on a vacation. They take a detour with horrifying results, okay? The end. All right, so the place and time of this particular story is the South, namely Georgia in 1955, or Georgia and Tennessee in 1955, okay? The characters that you want to concern yourself with are the grandmother, obviously. Bailey and the kids and the wife are almost extraneous to this story. I mean, they exist only to be killed. so the stakes of the story are raised. Okay, so but let's talk about the grandmother for a second, because the grandmother, there's a lot of evidence in the story that of what kind of person she is. Okay, she's concerned with appearances. Now think about what that means. Okay, there's that whole passage where they talk about what she wore, her gloves and her little organdy, stuff, and that, what was it? If she were dead on the side of the road, anybody seeing her would know at once that she was a lady. So she doesn't really care if she is one, she just has to appear to one. Now think about what that means. What does that really have to do with anything? Okay, and are these kind of people that that are like this, that are concerned only with appearances? As long as you, what did Fernando Lamas say in Fernando's Hideaway in SNL a million years ago? It is better to look good than to feel good. So in this case, she's like that. Okay, She's also manipulative. She's passive aggressive and judgmental. Okay. In other words, she is a garden variety Southern grandmother. um, I had two of them. Okay, they were, I guess, what you'd call steel magnolias. But boy, they for people who didn't have a lot of power in their lives, they ruled the roost, and they could make you, they could do anything they wanted. So she's the quintessential Southern grandmother. Okay, um, she's not a good person. Okay, but she wants to appear as one, which is just as good in her mind. All right. She's obsessed with the past. Ding, ding, ding. That is very, very important. Now, what I want you guys to go do, pause this, and I want you to go Google Golden Age Fallacy. Fallacy. Golden Age Fallacy. Okay. What that means, a fallacy is something that's not true. Fallacy is something that's faulty. The Golden Age Fallacy states that at some point in the past, when that is and where that was is always real nebulous. But sometime in the past, things were perfect. And now everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. Okay. That is not true. Okay. At no time in the past was there ever this golden age where everybody had it good. Okay. Now, when you hear, I don't know, certain phrases out there, like for example, just one randomly that pops into my head, something like, I don't know, make America great again. Okay. In that phrase right there is all of the golden age fallacy you want. Okay. Make America great again. What does that mean? Okay. That means that America is no longer great. It once was. And we need to go back to where that was. Now, the questions that are suggested by that phrase that I want to know is, at what time in the past are we talking about? Like, when were we great? And what does that mean that we were great? I mean, what does that mean? Okay. And two, if we got to make it great again, and by the way, that's an imperative sentence, you make America great again. Okay. So it's almost like a command to make America great again. So the question is, well, how do we do that? All right. Now, we know that there's some people with some specific answers to those questions. Okay. Whether that's close down the border, take out all the brown people and shoot them. There's all kinds of people that have all kinds of answers to those questions about how we can get back to greatness. Okay. That's the problem, isn't it? But just so you know, when you get to be my age, I'm 49, and you have children, don't do it anytime soon if you don't have children. You will find yourself saying, in my day, things were this. In my day, things were that. And that's just how it is. Okay. People have been saying that forever, since we crawled out of our caves. Unga Munga, the caveman, was complaining about his kids, Pebbles and Bam Bam, who didn't understand, how hard it is to go kill a saber-toothed tiger, and they're not grateful. I mean, come on. It's been happening forever. You'll say it. I said it, everybody does. You will turn into your parents. Okay, but just so we're clear, in this particular story, at no time in the past was it perfect for everybody. Okay, and you got to ask yourself, who was it good for? So she is emblematic of that idea that the past was always better. And look at the story. Why does she go to Florida? I mean, they're going to Florida on vacation, but why does she insist on taking a detour? Because she used to spend time when she was younger in this house in Tennessee, and she wants to go back. So she's returning to the past. If we need any more evidence, she meets Red Sammy, right? Red Sammy is singing her song. You can't win these days. These kids come in the other day, and I let them charge that gas. And why not do that? And all this. And you can't win, all kinds of stuff. And they're both singing the same song. The past was great. Now sucks. Let's get back to it, or whatever. Okay, so that's not true. Okay, but think about the type of people that would say such a thing and maintain such a thing. It's not that these people don't get wrapped up in who they are in the story. Okay. Pull the camera back once you see how they fit together, and then see who they represent. What is it what are their worldviews? What are we talking about here? Okay. Now, the other guy we got to worry about is the misfit. Okay. Now, this guy, if you're looking at a comparison and contrast, the misfit and the grandmother, they're kind of similar in a lot of ways. They see the world in a lot of ways very similar, but very differently too, because whereas the grandmother is only concerned with how she appears, the misfit does not care. The misfit knows how he appears and he plays to it. Okay. In fact, doesn't he say that he calls himself the misfit? The news didn't give him that name. He gave himself that name. So think about what that means. Okay. So he's clear-eyed about this, right? And at the end of the story, we know what's happening. Okay. And let me give you a little idea about. I mean, you can Google Jacques Lacan psychoanalysis, but you all know who Sigmund Freud was, right? The id, the superego, the ego, psychoanalysis. He's been pretty much discredited as any kind of legitimate psychiatrist these days. But for theory, you can't get rid of them altogether. As how the world works, psychoanalysis is a very interesting theory that continues to help people out to define the world around them. A guy named Jacques Lacan, who's French, they're all French. He repurposed psychoanalysis many years, and instead of the id, the superego, and the ego, he said that we human beings perceive the world in three ways. Okay, one area is called the imaginary. One area is called the symbolic, and the other area is called the real with a capital R. Okay. Now, symbolic is where we live our day-to-day lives. That's where language lives. That's where this lives. Like thumbs up means good or okay or whatever. Any kind of sign interpretation, that's language. Okay, that's where written or spoken or gesture or any kind of thing like that. That's what symbolic. Pictures, all that is symbolic. Okay, imaginary are our hopes and our dreams. Okay, we wake up with the imaginary. We imagine what we're going to do. The symbolic is how we actually do it. So our day-to-day lives are where we live in the imaginary and the symbolic. Okay. Now, the real is the problem down here. The real with a capital R, okay, is not like, this phone is real as opposed to being imaginary, okay? It's not like that. It's a very specific meaning. When people say that, is that too real for you? This is what they're alluding to, okay? The real is too much for us to be able to handle, okay? The real is where you cannot hide in the symbolic. You cannot hide in the imaginary. It is there, okay? And Lacan argued that since we can't live there, our minds can't handle it. We have to somehow get our mind space out of it. And then we only really see the real, tiny bits of the real, when things like natural disasters happen or war or let's imagine you were in a concentration camp. Okay, that's all real all the time. If you watch The Walking Dead, danger around every corner, blood and guts all over the place. That's real. That's the real. Okay. Because we can't deal with the real, we create this bubble around ourselves. Okay. Because when you think about what reality really is, all right, not to be cynical, but all we have to do every day, all we have to do is survive another day. Okay. Now we have civilization, we have the internet, we have, Powerpuff Girls and whatever else that gets us through the day. Okay, words with friends, all that kind of stuff. Okay, shielding us from the reality, which is you and I are in direct competition for dwindling resources every single day. Okay, and you can dress it up in a bow tie or a cravat and a little hat and all this and sip your tea but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, we are at war with each other. Okay, about scant resources to survive to another day. When you take away all of this, that's what you're left with. Too much. We can't handle that. Okay, so what happens at the end of this story is the real. I mean, we know what's really happening. Her family's being led one by one into the woods and being killed. Okay, that's the real. Okay, but the grandmother cannot handle it. She's compartmentalizing. She is so obsessed with what's going on right in front of her that she can't even let her mind go there, okay? But something happens at the end of the story where her mind clears and she's not hallucinating, but she says, "Why, you're one of my own babies, one of my own children." And he shoots her, okay? What does that mean? Okay? She did not forget she had a child. He's literally not her child. But what does it mean for her to be the mother of him, or for him to be her child. What does that mean? When you think about what these characters represent, that is important because a mother begets something, right? A mother gives birth to something. A child honors the mother, right? So think about how these characters fit together with that being a metaphor, okay? And that makes the story very rich because it's a very bleak story, but there's a lot going on here. Okay, there's a lot going on in this story. Certainly, when it was written, philosophy was, and obviously she was went to grad school, so she was all into philosophy. So O'Connor, for all her simplicity about these crazy characters she writes about, there's a philosophical undertone of everything that she writes. Not just, I mean, you can tell that she's struggling with the good and the evil. I mean, look at the epigram for this particular story, right? The dragon is by the side of the road, watching those who pass. Beware, lest he devour you. We go to the Father of souls, but it is necessary to pass by the dragon. Okay, so you got to run the gauntlet to get to the kingdom of heaven. You got to run through hell, right? Okay, so what does that mean in the modern world? Okay, there's a lot going on here, and you could absolutely get 5 to 7 pages out of this. Absolutely. Okay. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this bleak story, and I will see you guys next time.